Want to elevate your game? Want to reach an engaged audience? Have no fear. Advertise your business on our podcast. Connect with us, the Coffee with Joy Talk Show podcast, and let's grow together. Email us, and we surely look forward to hear from you. Back to Coffee with Joy. I am your host, Joy. So excited to have you all here. I am so elated to have my guest, Joshua, as we talk about, all things boxing. So, but before we get into that, I hope that you all voted. I hope that you all made the right decision. I hope that you all are excited with your decision. Of course, it's your civil duty if you are in the United States. So if you are here, please let us know if you just voted. Let us know in the comment section. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest, Josh, on. So excited. So everyone go wild. Hey, what did you, Joshua? What's up?
Hey, what's going on, Joy?
Yes. So right before we get in, can you tell people a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get in with all things boxing.
Hey, how's it going, Joy? Appreciate you allowing me to come be on this platform. And I did vote. I actually had 2 stickers. One's on my jacket and I misplaced the other one. That being said, I agree. Everyone go out there, let your voice be heard. But anyway, so my name is Joshua Brewer. Sometimes I go by Joshua City. I'm involved with the sport of boxing in different fronts and facets. So I would say that I'm an amateur official. I'm also with an organization called Potomac Valley Association as the secretary on the board there. And we handle all of the sanctions for amateur boxing in Washington, D.C., as well as Prince George's and Montgomery County, Maryland. So if there's boxing going on in this area on the amateur side, we're involved. Additionally, I also have a channel, YouTube channel, which has a podcast that is tied to it as well, where I discuss boxing, but primarily I create videos that are centered on historical boxing figures that fought generally within the late 1800s, early 1900s. Those are probably the areas of forte for me right there, what I really have a passion for. So if you check out my stuff, that's what I'm generally profiling right there.
Awesome. Wow. So before we even get there, how did you get into boxing? Because that's not everything. But I want to give people a little backstory. So I met Joshua at this podcast movement. And of course, very friendly guy. We was talking. So we still stayed in contact. So I'm so grateful for you to be on my show. Yes. I don't want to be corny, but that's, hey, my guest, Josh. So, how did you get into boxing? What was boxing? How did it intrigue you? What was the excitement? Because I'm always curious, because that's a lot of work, right? To constantly keep punching, just the thought of it, or some type of mental, of course, mind over matter. How did you get into boxing?
So I gravitated towards boxing as a youngster, and I want to say, for clarity's sake, when I was younger, I didn't box as an amateur or anything officially. I mean, I've been tied to the sport in terms of interest since I was a child. And I recall my 9th grade project for science project, or what you call it, that being centered around the sport of boxing. I had boxing gloves. I would do some stuff in the backyard, front yard as well, with some neighborhood kids. We go out there. So nothing sanctioned right there. But I'd always followed it and watched it. And ultimately, that led me to wanting to be involved at some point. And I essentially went down the path of becoming an official. But prior to that, of course, I was always tied to the sport in terms of the viewing experience. And I used to blog when I was a bit younger as well. And at one point, I ended up deciding, hey, I saw a position open for a writing website that was centered on boxing, and I applied for it. And from there, I started to write about it. And then that led me down the path of course, creating my own brand, which is the 86 boxing brand, and starting to talk about it more, which is what I do now. And then eventually creating videos. And that all just came full circle as far as just me being involved on the officiating side, because I am an amateur official, as mentioned, with intent to turn pro at some point. But I also have just a deep interest in watching the action that takes place in the sport. So I would say it was just some spark and interest just there, because I do
Mhm.
like other sports, but number one for me is boxing, and some would consider it barbaric at times. So I often say I wonder if it was the days of gladiators, would I be someone who liked that? I
Yeah.
say that I wouldn't, but I don't know. But something that's allowed me to gravitate towards it, and I've been hooked on it ever since.
Wow. Now, have anybody in your family, have they done back boxing, or was just like a simple love that just sparked out of nowhere?
It was a simple love, I would say.
Mhm.
No, I don't have a direct family member, though there have been brewers that have boxed. I don't have a direct family member that I know of that boxes. It's just something that kind of I gravitated towards. And if you're a fan of boxing and you're involved with boxing, then sometimes it can be a small world sport, even though it's a global sport. So you don't often run into individuals who are really up on boxing and know what is happening as much real time. So you tend to find more people online, things of that nature, that are tied to it and a little bit more in depth in it than your circle or just a random person you would find just walking down the street.
Hmm. Oh, okay, because I mean, I don't know anybody that box, right?
Yeah.
Because like you stated, it's a barbaric situation from the unknown, right? Until you actually get into it, the technique, it helps with the mental, right? It helps with discipline, it helps with motivation. So can you talk on a part where what all that encompass? Because again, it does take everything, it's endless training in order just to get into the ring. And we seen, of course, multiple fights where a fight was over like less than a minute or something, and it's when we talking about big boxes, right? So if you could talk
Yeah.
on the aspect of like the mental, like how does it increase the mental, or what over time does it decrease, meaning that, not participating, and what are like some effects in positive and negative?
Oh yeah. So boxing is very much a mental game, and there are certain aspects of it that rely more on the mental than it does the physical, because we all have probably seen those situations where the individual who didn't expect to win ended up winning. It's not a beauty contest, it's not a fitness contest, and
Mhm.
it comes down to that mental aspect, and then those things, intangibles that you can't really teach. Now, on the physical side, certainly it helps when you say have a background in the sport, or you're an athlete, for instance. And I won't say it's necessarily just because you're an athlete, but more so when you have a lot of experience or involvement in the sport from a younger age. That certainly benefits you versus someone who chooses to get into the sport or turn to boxing at a later stage, especially if you're competing on a professional or elite amateur or professional level. There are definitely degrees of separation when you take those types of things into account. But I would say the mental piece of it is a large part of it, because it just requires so much of you as far as the
Mm.
training, what you have to do in preparation, the time in between fights. And this is not just on the professional side, but the amateur side as well. For instance, on the amateur side, of course, you're prepping just as though you would be a professional there in that ring, even though it's amateur. You have to make weight. This requires a lot from you mentally. You have to stick to strict diets, things of that nature, just to make sure you're on point before you get to when you get to the point when you're actually going to be competing in the ring. There are those, or on the amateur side, I should say, you weigh in the same day of the event. So that means that you have to come in there, you have to make weight, otherwise you can't fight. And then you go from there and you're in the ring, things of that nature. In the pro level, of course, they weigh in the day before. So that even is tough. And there's a mental aspect where you're looking for that edge in any capacity. You sometimes see struggles. Some individuals cut too much weight, or they probably should be fighting at a higher weight, and they end up cutting weight. and the methods and the process of going about that, it can be very dangerous. And we've seen situations where, or in the sport in general, where there has been a number of things that came into fold, like some dealing with kidney issues, some just literally passing out and under doctor's orders being unable to fight. They're based on the weigh in and what it takes to get down to a certain weight. So a multitude of things. And that's where the mental aspect definitely comes into the fold. And it also is very apparent when you're actually in there, you're competing. When you start to get tired, seeing attrition, things of that nature, that's when you really are going to rely on those mental faculties, because at some point in the fight, then a lot of the physical attributes, they kind of go away because you're both tired. You're both right there on your last leg. You're both out of energy. So that's when you're going to rely on the things that you have been taught, the training. And that's why it's great to have a good team on your side as well to help you with getting to that point and when you're actually in there. But at the end of the day, the ring in itself,
Yeah.
besides the official being there, who's supposed to be on the background essentially and just there to ensure that everything is done within the rules and from a safety standpoint, it's just going to be the two of you in the ring. It's just going to be two individuals, and one is going to have the mental makeup that takes them over the top. The other might come up short, but hey, that's where the training, all the things you put into it, and sometimes where you come from in life factors in, and that's why some have more success than others.
Wow. Now, as you're talking about the team, what is the team? What consists of a team? Because many people know what's on a basketball team, a football team. Well,
Yeah.
what is a team for one individual? To assure that he gets this win. And then, like, what is the highest value? And I guess in the amateur as well as the pro level, like as far as money wise. Because again, I know after you win this fight, it has to be this astronomical amount of money. But what is the highest in amateur level, as well as, if it is money, as well as professional? So what does the team consist of, and what is the highest amount that these boxers go after?
Yeah. So when you think about it from a team perspective, it really comes down to who you're tied to there, whether that's locally, where you travel a bit abroad or further out or whatever to be with specific coaches, gyms, etc. So the general makeup is that if you're a boxer, you're going to have probably a gym that you're tied to. Though some they do it a bit more low key, they may have their own home thing going on. But generally, you're tied to a specific gym. You may have a particular coach that you work with, and if you're with a gym and or coach, then generally the coach isn't working alone. They may have others who are involved and work within the confines of that gym or that group in which they actually take on fighters and actually train fighters, things of that nature. So you're going to have your coach. You're probably going to have, if you have, so you have situations where they're father sons, father daughters, mother sons, mother daughters who are involved in the process as well. And so sometimes they'll be the ones who have been involved with training them, starting them out, and they'll bring on other voices or others to help in terms of other coaches who may have a little bit more of experience, a little bit more depth in terms of the different types of fighters that they have dealt with. But generally, you're going to have your coaches, you're going to have those that are going to be in your corner who are like considered to be the assistants or seconds. And these are individuals who have knowledge of the game, who probably are trainers themselves.
Yeah.
And when you're operating there in the confines of the ring, you're going to have a main coach in these seconds. They're there to assist in whatever capacity, provide their insight, things of that nature. Of course, you have people who deal with cuts, swelling, things of that nature as well, who are tied to the corners. And these are generally individuals who may be coaches as well. So
Yeah.
really a very home-like, home-built, family-type sport in that capacity. So when you think about a team as far as a boxer, then it's just going to be a number of individuals who may be tied to that gym and or just that individual or the coach who have some form of involvement from an overall perspective. And with boxers, when you think about them and they compete, usually, of course, you get paid to fight, but oftentimes you spend time at certain gyms and you're training, you're accumulating, or I guess you could say sort of accumulating debt or just some form of a means for paying your coach or whatever it may be, your team. And this is something that you have to account for. It's usually percentage based. So a boxer may have a certain percentage that he pays to the trainer, he pays to the gym, he or she pays to the trainer or gym. They may also have a manager. If you have a manager is usually working to get you fights or get you other deals, endorsements, things of that nature, speaking engagements, whatever it may be. And there may be a percentage that you have with with that management. Additionally, there are promoters. So sometimes promoters and management aren't the same. So your manager may be working with the promoter or have a relationship with the promoter. Sometimes a fighter and their internal team, maybe their coaches, then those involved are working with a promoter directly because they're doing it more independent and they're not signed with the management team, or they are not in a multi-fight contract with the promoter. So it's a multitude of different things that come into fold. But the general makeup, I would say, is that you're going to have a fighter, their trainer, and by virtue of their trainer slash coach, there may be some individuals involved. You're going to have a manager, if not a manager, ultimately a promoter. If you choose to go the other route, then coaches act as managers and they'll work directly with the promoters, etc. when you're going into that contract signing process. And that's the way it generally works. And that's the same thing for the amateur side, except on the amateur side, you're not signing contracts. It's not professional. And one of the questions you had in terms of the payment side of it, amateurs generally, you're not getting paid as an amateur. So there are amateurs out there with hundreds of fights, and oftentimes they probably didn't get paid for them. Now, boxing has done more, I would say, here over the course of the last several years to try and offer something. So there are tournaments out there, like international tournaments, etc., where you can gain finances or reach financial success to a certain degree. Maybe there'll be a pot of money up if you get first place, first through second, things of that nature. But generally, when you're on the amateur side, yeah, you're in it not necessarily for the payment, but that dynamic is somewhat changing. And on the pro side of the house, then of course it is prize fighting. That's where the origins come from. You do it for money, of course. Now, you aren't necessarily going to get, or it's not going to be lucrative for you in the beginning. There are varying different degrees in wages as far as when a fighter is first starting out. It's just all really going to depend. If you're fighting on a televised card, then more than likely it's going to be higher than, or your pay might be higher than what you're getting on, say, a local card that isn't televised, even though these days you have a lot more that is out there because of streaming and such. Yeah. But it really does vary. So some of the top boxers, they tend to sign promotional deals with some of the top promoters, and therefore that may offer them a little bit more, certainly from an opportunity standpoint, there early on in their career, because they are going to be on television. They'll be on the undercards of some big fight cards, and people will be tuning in, which of course affects the purse because you'll have advertisers, sponsors, etc. And the fighters will have their own individual sponsors and such. But it can really, really vary. And if you go into it from the financial standpoint, looking for that, then of course, if you're at the very top of the sport, it could be very lucrative for you. But that being said, it's not guaranteed, and you have to work your way towards that. And they have this thing called the Muhammad Ali Act, which is meant to help ensure that fighters do get their just due when they're competing. That's something that doesn't exist in MMA, and that's been a point of contention over a number of years because they don't have something like that. And even in the MMA at the lower levels, oftentimes they don't get paid as much, even some of those that are doing televised fights, but they don't have that same type of act that was put in place. And boxers, they can benefit from that but generally it's going to be a pecking order to a certain degree. Once
Yeah.
you start getting your name out there and reach the top level of the sport, that exponentially increases your chances of gaining a lot more per fight. Just thinking about that from a financial standpoint.
Wow. One thing's for sure. You know your stuff about boxing. And in my head, I'm like literally just going through the lineage, like, okay, here, there, trying to put it to pieces. Like, for sure. You definitely know your thing about boxing. You know the the in and out of boxing. Let me tell you. So that is a good thing because, again, you're able to fully explain and really talk about it and really give full detail because I'm telling you, on a person on the outside looking in and not really looking in, just probably a peephole. Because again, I like boxing, but I'm not like a hard fanatic. Like if I see it or like friends watch it, I may watch it. But and it's
Yeah.
really watching it. It's a prime time, right? Because
Hmm.
somebody, the media, whether conventional, traditional, contemporary media has really blown it up for like, yes, these two are
Hmm.
competing. That's when I will watch it, but it's really more like a
Yeah.
glance or I catch the highlights. So, but after these messages, we're going to continue to talk to Joshua because we would like to know, how did he come up with 86 boxing? What is 86 boxing? I'm almost sure I know what it is. But after these messages, we're going to return to talk to my guest, Joshua. To elevate your game? Want to reach an engaged audience? Have no fear. Advertise your business on our podcast. Connect with us, the Coffee with Joy Talk Show podcast, and let's grow together. Email us, and we surely look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to Coffee with Joy. So excited to see you all here. So keep in mind, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy. As always, if you like to reach out, please make sure that you go to our website, which is thecoffeewithjoyshow.com, or email us at thecoffeewithjoyshow@gmail.com. So we would love to hear from you. So we're going to bring my guest back up, and we're going to talk about where did 86 boxing come from? And we would like to know, how's the female side of boxing? So, hey, Josh, welcome back to Coffee with Joy. So, can you let us know, what is 86 boxing? How did you come up with that? And why is that so prevalent to your brand? What is the title about? I'm pretty much sure, but I'm going to go ahead and let you tell it. I'm going to let you go ahead and tell the people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. My favorite fighter is Mike Tyson. He won the World Heavyweight Championship in 1986. That being said, it just so happens to also be the year I was born,
Yeah.
so it kind of worked
Wait,
hand
let
in
me
hand.
rejoice. Let me rejoice. Let me rejoice. And I was right. I didn't know it was a twofold, but I got a fold.
Yes, yes,
Okay. I just want to
yeah.
make sure. But
So it definitely leans more towards the year I was born. When I was looking through a number of different names that I was going to try and come up with, I ended up going with the year I was born. And of course, it ended up creating this logo and, of course, the branding and
yes.
everything that is tied to it. And I will share that, interestingly, the logo in itself had a background or an inspiration that was tied to it. So my partner, she used to work in Pennsylvania, and she was there for about 2 years, and we used to drive up all the time. And there's this company, it's called 84 Lumber, and it's from 84 Pennsylvania. I believe that's the name of the actual town. It's called 84. And basically, we used to always pass by their facility and making that drive, that route each time. And basically, their sign just consisted of a red sign with the numbers 84 in white lettering, and I never knew what it was, or at least for a long period of time I didn't. Then I ended up looking it up one day and kind of just got interested in that story. So I'll share that. That was sort of an inspiration for me going this route as far as the logo in itself. And I bought a book on the founder. I do need to finish that book actually, but it's an interesting story. It's just a little small town in Pennsylvania, believe it or not. But
Yeah.
that's what kind of brought together the full gamut. And then, of course, it just went with a color that kind of stood out, and I almost changed it. But my partner, she told me, no, don't do that. And I just stuck with it. And I feel like it stands out, you know?
It does. The neon definitely penetrate. It says I'm here, I'm bold, and really is giving light to a topic, a sports that many people don't understand. Even like with
Yep.
golf, where people slowly
Yep.
but surely they're trying to understand it, right? But you
Oh, yeah.
really have to have someone in your life to really walk you through it, because it's not as easy to understand. Because again, all we see, and I have to include, when I include we, is me, include when what all we see is just boxing. We just see and throwing hands. And of course, you see precision, you see different techniques and people are moving,
Mhm.
but you really don't understand. So definitely having that color definitely penetrate to really say, I am here. This and it brings the eye catching and really explain, okay, even though it says 86 boxing, but you're able to really go in detail to really explain, okay, how the ups and downs left and right about 86 boxing. Now, in your journey of boxing and, going in and out as far as being a commentator, playing the sport, now,
Mhm.
how is the female side? Because we
Yeah.
know that boxing is surely definitely a co-ed sport, but how is the female side and what have you seen change from when you started to now?
Oh yeah. So the female side, I would say it's getting to the point where it's thriving as much as it's ever been, probably more so. And I'm really happy about that fact. And as a matter of fact, on this channel, or at least 86 Boxing Channel, one of the prides is being able to highlight a number of the female boxers that are out there because their side of the sport is just continuing to evolve and it's pushing things forward. Right now, we have a number of top women in the sport who are doing their thing. They're able to headline, they're able to do pay per view headlines, you name it. Some of the best boxers that we have in the sport right now are women. And that's a testament to the work that has gone in for those over the years, dating as far back as the likes of Barbara Buttrick, who fought in the 50s, to who we see now with the likes of Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, who continue to put the sport in the place that it needs to be for the women. And then, of course, those like Layla Ali and Wolf. These are women that help to just push things to where they are. Christy Martin, the list goes on. And I would say that right now we are sort of in that time frame and era where it just continues to grow. I haven't seen as many women headlining as I do right now. And I want to give a shout out to Tiara Brown. She's a boxer who I met early on when I was training, who is one who is pushing the sport forward. She is a role model for all those involved in the sport. She was a police officer while also fighting at the same time. She's now just full time as a fighter, but she's an inspiration for all. So definitely look her up. And I think that the women's side, without it right now in the sport, then we will be lacking just from an overall perspective because they have that much of a mark on it. And I can even speak from a personal standpoint. Just when I got into it from the officiating side of things, just
Yeah.
being able to work with some of the women who are involved in the sport. And there's more than people may think. There's certainly more than people may think who are involved with the sport, who without them, the sport wouldn't be where it's at.
Mhm.
There's an organization called Heels On or Heels Off, Gloves On Boxing, Hogo Boxing, basically. I get to
Okay.
work with them. It's a privilege, of course. You have Candy Jacobs, who's the president, Tamara McKinney, who is the vice president. And these are women who have been involved with the sport for years, whether that's from a personal standpoint or getting into it just through connections. And they come from families like Candy, for instance, come from a family that is involved in the sport of boxing dating way back, names you will have heard and all that stuff, but that could be a long story. But those are the types of women that are involved in the sport. You have the organization that I'm with, Potomac Valley, where I officiate under the president. Her name is Latasha Washington. She's involved in the sport, used to box when she was younger. She's one of the top officials here in the sport. And I've learned so much from her just being in ring, certainly there early on. A lot of the things that I was learning was from her because she was there giving me the tips and pointers, things of that nature. And then when you're at the event, you see just the number of women that are involved. So I will say that it is at a higher degree than what may meet the eye. And I'm talking about a truly high degree, and the sport would not thrive, especially when you're thinking about it from how events are actually put into play, how they are capped off, etc. Without women involved, the sport of boxing would not be where it's at right now. And 9 times out of 10, most of these events would not be able to operate, maybe 10 times out of 10, to be honest with you. So it's at a high point right now, for lack of better words, or to just sum it up. Women's boxing is a key piece of the sport. And that's not just lip service that I'm giving. If you go out there, you search, you Google, you do whatever, you'll see that that is very much apparent in these times that we are in right now. And there's actually a major women's fight that is going to be coming up next month, as a matter of fact.
Wow. I mean, I'm just in that awe. Like so many women has really taken it from, because of one woman really opened doors for many women to get into a sport that's, definitely dominated by men. And just to hear that, without them, probably this sport will be lacking, and it's not to say in a bad way. It just shows that, hey, women in general really love the sport, and there's a sport for everybody. But truly, boxing, like I said, I like boxing, but it's not my top tier. But I know for a fact there are many women who really enjoy the sport. Now, if there is someone who would like to reach out or get into a sport, get into boxing, what's the like for their child, or if they feel that they're at an age where they still can box and still can hold their own, what are like, if there had to be like two criterias, what is something that they must do in order to join a boxing league or become a boxer?
I would say first do the research, and you can do that. It's laid out for you, especially if you're in this area, by going to pvabox.org, pvabox.org, because that's the organization where we do it on the amateur side. I would say that is probably the route to go, especially when you're starting out from an early standpoint. You have to be 8 years old before you can compete in an actual official amateur bout, but that just shows you how young they are when they start competing. So I would go that route, because if you take the official channels, we're governed by USA Boxing. That's the other one. Or depending on wherever you are, just go to usaboxing.org, and you'll be able to search your local boxing committee, your different clubs that are there. There might be one right down the street from you. You never knew was there. And that is what can allow for you to get locked in. So when you go through that process, then it becomes official. You're backed by USA Boxing, and you get tied to coaches who are involved with other boxers who are competing in the sport. And it's the amateur route is probably the premier route to go, especially if it's something you want to take to that next level, like the professional level. But even if you don't want to do that, you're just going to be around with people who are legitimately involved in boxing and do this on a daily basis. So USA Boxing, ultimately, if you remember anything, usaboxing.org, especially if you want to get your child involved. If you want to get involved yourself, that's even a route as well. Just go there, and it'll lay out all of the things for membership. There are memberships or whatnot. There is a membership that is involved, but it's certainly worthwhile and probably the best channel to go through, because you're no doubt going to be learning from the best in the sport as it relates to those that are involved with USA Boxing.
Wow. So there you have it, people. Before we conclude the show, Josh, what is something that keeps you going? Because again, to house all that information is a lot, to really be able to spit it out, without telling someone, hey, to go to research. You are the researcher, right? You are the person who's able to at least give them a good substance amount if they truly want to be in this sport. So what keeps you going? What keeps your adrenaline to really push forward, to really make this sport a love? Because, we all know people grow out, people really don't stick with things, they really lose their consistency with something. But this has been since 86, well over almost 3 decades, well over 3 decades, right? Yeah. So what is something that keeps Joshua going and keeping his love of boxing at the top tier?
I would say it's the history for sure, just the rich history of the sport. And that's something that I really hearken on. And that's what I dedicate a lot of time to, as I mentioned, in chronicling and profiling some of these great fighters over the years. I guess it may be just a love for history overall, but specifically history in boxing, and just those stories and being able to bring those to life, and just being enriched in this sport and involved just from an overall perspective is what keeps me going on a daily basis, because I know that there are more stories to be unveiled. There are more individuals that people don't know about, and I want to share that. And then just doing it real time as far as officiating, I get to see all of the athletes that are involved, the coaches that are involved, real time. This is a real deal sport that means the world to them, and they put in a lot of time, dedication to include those that are out there officiating, those that are judging, those are just involved in the sport in general, those that you may not see on the cameras. It's just a lot of time and dedication involved. So just seeing that, knowing where they're coming from, knowing that they are there for the athletes and in the enrichment of the sport and seeing it forward, that's what pushes me to continue to do so on a routine basis. So I don't see myself stopping. I'll forever be involved with it in some capacity.
Whoa. Yeah. And I'm telling you, don't stop. You too. Look at it. You're so deep in. It's gonna take an elevator, not a ladder, but an elevator to get you out of. So, Josh, thank you so much for being on Coffee with Joy. So please make sure that if you like to subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy for many great topics. For our show, we're bringing on many great people to really just to show testimonial, how to, and just to explain certain things. So if you would like to be a guest and you have a story to share, we would truly love to have you on Coffee with Joy. Please make sure that you go to our website, which is thecoffeewithjoyshow.com, as well as, or email us at the Coffee with Joy Show. If you'd like to patronize our company, please follow the QR codes here, and truly any amount will help. And keep in mind, Coffee with Joy is up for an award at the Full Figure Industry Awards. We are so excited. Yay for Coffee with Joy. So hopefully we'll come back being an award-winning talk show podcast. But if not, we still a winner. But as always, please make sure that you like, subscribe, follow Coffee with Joy. If you know if it's a weekday or a weekend or a day, it is Coffee with Joy. Until then, you all live life on purpose and share your story. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.